Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here. We are celebrating a year, a little bit past a year actually, by the time this goes live, of recording this podcast and producing it for you. And I just want to first give a shout out to my podcast producer, Colette, for all of the hard work that she's done in the last year. And she's such a great partner in this podcast. So I have to say thank you to her. I also have to say thank you to you for listening, whether you're very first time listening or you've been here for a while. Just want to say thank you for listening. And I am just here to make it a really good investment of your time. I've heard from so many of you personally telling me that these episodes are so packed with tips and strategies and resources for you that you've been able to implement and make a difference in your business. And that's why I'm here. That's what I love what I do. And I'm really grateful to those of you who have reached out and to those of you who listen that I've never talked to, and to you, if you're brand new listening. I'm just grateful that you're here and really passionate about elevating and expanding this thing we do as independent consultants. So thank you. The other thing I want to share with you just quickly before we dive into today's episode is I wanted to give a shout out to Getting It Done 84. They left me a review on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review. I very much appreciate. It says, Melissa is sharing a ton of great information in a quick and direct way. She's a pleasure to listen to, and I'm always learning something new and useful. So I really appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, as part of that is many of you have reached out to tell me that you put a review on Apple, and I haven't seen them. So I'm in a little bit of investigatory mode at the moment, trying to figure out if there's some kind of a glitch or something going on with Apple. So if you've left a review and you don't see it there, if you've left a rating, you won't see that. But if you've left a review, if you could let me know, send me an email, melissa@melissalieberman.com, and I can just use that as detail to continue this investigation. So with that troubleshooting in mind, let's dive into today's topic. I cannot contain my excitement over this topic. I'm so excited to share it with you. I will try to pace myself and really explain what I want to talk about in a non-auctioneer voice type of a way, which is usually my mode when I get so excited. It's like an auctioneer. Okay, so with that, the topic for today is how to use an assessment to elevate your consulting lead generation. I found a tool that I cannot wait to share with you. I've been using it for the last 3 weeks, and it's incredible. And I want to share with you how you're able to use it for your own business to generate leads and to elevate the conversations that you're having with your consulting prospects. So with that, let's talk about how to use an assessment for your lead generation. This is why we're talking about this today. When it comes to lead generation, I get 2 common questions from solo consultants. The first question is, how can I get the attention of potential consulting clients just to get the conversation started with them? It feels a little bit hard, especially with cold type prospects. It feels a little bit hard to get that initial conversation going. How can I do that? How can I get better at that? The second common question that I often get in terms of lead generation is, how can I elevate my value earlier in the sales process? So maybe you get that first conversation, but how do you keep the conversation going and really elevate your value so that they see you as someone who's more strategic versus more of a doer, more of a staff augmentation type of a consultant? So with those 2 questions in mind, I'm going to share with you a technique that you're going to be able to use to solve these common challenges and really create conversations with potential clients that is in a much more strategic tone in a strategic approach. And so it's going to kind of kill two birds with one stone. It's a great way to get the attention of those prospective clients. And it's also a great way for you to create a more elevated conversation that helps them to see what you're able to bring to the table in terms of bigger picture versus them looking at you as an extra pair of hands. So with that, the answer here is that we're going to use assessments. We're going to use assessments to create those strategic conversations and get the ball rolling, get the conversations started with those ideal potential clients for your consulting business. So specifically, we're going to talk about today how to use assessments to elevate that consulting lead generation process. I'm going to walk you through why assessments, and then I'm going to give you some examples of types of assessments you can use depending on what type of consulting you do. Then we're going to talk about really quickly a tool that I found that makes this so incredibly easy to set up the assessment, to everything from soup to nuts. And then finally, I'll give you a couple of examples of process flows that you would use these assessments in as part of your business development process. So it makes it really, really tangible. This is going to be a packed episode of really how to implement this assessment strategy to start creating higher quality leads and advancing conversations for your consulting business. So with that, let's start off with why even think about using an assessment for lead generation. And even before I dive into why assessments, let me just say what I mean by an assessment. What I mean by an assessment is essentially you asking a potential client or someone you even haven't met yet, maybe you don't even know if they're a potential client, but you think they might be, asking them a series of questions that qualifies them to you to say, you know what, this person might be a good fit, or what they do might be a good fit for my consulting. And then secondarily, it helps them to understand by the answers that they give and the results you provide, it helps them to better understand the problems that they might be facing. It helps them to better understand the strategy they might be thinking of implementing. So it helps them to look at what they're doing in their day-to-day that you can help improve upon. So it's really a tangible way to help your prospects to see what their problems are from a different vantage point, and helps you to engage in a conversation as a result of that. That gives you kind of a background of what an assessment is, right? It's just literally a series of questions and a result. Then, so why assessments? You want to grab the attention of your economic buyer at the end of the day, right? Especially if you're at a place in your business where you are not seeing as many consulting opportunities come in from your existing network. So you're at a place where you need to start expanding out from that and creating a larger network of potential clients. Or maybe you're at a place where you have a really strong network, but don't really have a way to kind of keep them warm, keep providing value to them. The assessment can be such a great way to do that because it really grabs their attention. It's something unique, right? Just such a simple way to say, hey, I created this assessment, or I created this scorecard, or I created this quiz, however you want to call it. And I think it might help you look at your business in a little bit different way, your business unit in a little bit different way, or your goals in a different way. Thought I'd send it over and see what you think. Would be some of the messaging, right, of how you might get the attention of an economic buyer that you've had some interaction with in the past. Or it could even be, a brand new person that you haven't even necessarily met yet. As you start engaging in those conversations with them and getting to know them, it could be, something to the effect of, well, I know we don't know each other yet, but based on what I'm seeing with other organizations in your industry, I noticed that you're facing this type of a challenge. So I thought I would send over this assessment to you to take. It takes 5 minutes, and it might give you some insights into things that you might not necessarily be seeing in your business unit at the moment, but that you might want to be keeping your eye out for, right? That touches on so many things for a potential consulting buyer. It touches on, there's something going on industry-wide that I might be missing. There's a trend happening that I might be missing. I can spend 5 minutes trying to figure out if it's the case or not, right? And you're also proactively adding value to them. You're giving them some ideas of what trends might be through this tool. You're giving them some idea about what they might be kind of evaluating themselves against from a best practice or scorecard perspective. It's a really quick and simple way for you when you're using an assessment type process to really give them some ideas of where they might be needing to focus on improvements for their organization that they might have missed. And, honestly, it's already April, right? If you're listening to this in the real time, what a great way to say, as we're starting out Q2 or moving on toward the second half of the year, this is such a great way to take a moment and look at kind of assess where you're at, and I can help you move forward. That's why an assessment. Can you see how those types of conversations, and I'll walk you through some examples here in a minute, but how those kinds of conversations could be so compelling. You're not asking anyone for a favor to talk to you. You're not like digging for what their problems are. You're literally proactively providing them with a tool they can use, on their own in the 5-minute little break that they have, and can give them some insights about the business unit they're running or the organization they're responsible for. So that's why an assessment can be so powerful, because it's you leading with value, and it's you leading with, hey, I want to be helpful, versus, hey, can you do me a favor and talk to me? So that's why what I'm going to share with you today in more detail is such a powerful approach. So let me give you some examples to make this more tangible. Some examples would be, let's say you're an agile consultant. So as an agile consultant, you're in the business of helping development organizations, engineering organizations, technology organizations create repeatable processes that move very quickly, right? I'm not an agile expert. I know enough to be dangerous, so hopefully I explain that clearly. But at the end of the day, when you're an agile consultant, most development organizations, software organizations at this point have some form of agile in place, right? Unless you're really working with late adopters. But you could go in and create an assessment to send to your ideal prospective clients and help that. And it's set up, you would set it up in a way that helps them to assess their current agile process against agile standards. Because I think we all know in the agile world, there's very few, if any, companies that are using agile very effectively. And they could all use some form of an improvement, right? And a lot of times it's like, check the box, we're agile, when really they're still waterfall. So that's an example from an agile consulting perspective, where you're helping them to really see what that as is of their process, and where they could help design an assessment that would allow them to figure out where their areas of opportunities are. Another example of creating an assessment is, let's say you're an HR change management expert. You could write an assessment, and I'm going to teach you how to do this in the easiest way possible in this software tool that I found here in a minute. So I don't want to lose you at, this sounds really complicated, Melissa, because I can assure you it is not. I have one myself. I'll share with you the link. It's amazing. Okay, so going back, you're an HR change management expert, for example. You could set up an assessment that helps companies assess the quality of their retention programs. How incredibly compelling is that right now? Everyone's having issues with retention. Everyone's having issues hiring effective people. They want to retain the people they have and not make the problem bigger. So creating an assessment that helps them assess the quality of their retention programs against what you know to be best practices. Who wouldn't want to take that and really figure out where they're at? Another example, let's say you're a healthcare compliance consultant. You could set up an assessment that helps your ideal clients assess the effectiveness of their internal auditing processes, for example. They may already know that they're not doing well from a compliance perspective overall. You pick out a piece of that process and create an assessment to help them really dive in and figure out, where could my problems be? I'll give you a couple more examples and then we'll move on. Let's say that you're a fractional COO. You could help create an assessment that helps companies assess a very specific process, like let's say fractional CFO, for example. A fractional CFO, you could create an assessment that helps companies really assess the effectiveness of their budgeting process, because they're going to start budgeting in Q3. That's not that far away, right? So If you're a PR expert, you could create an assessment that helps them understand the compliance with PR strategies. What does adoption look like? Why aren't people being compliant with the strategies that are created? So I could go on and on. There's so many different ways you could take a sliver of what you do as a consultant, really think about what are the best practices, and then put those into an assessment so that your ideal potential clients take that assessment and really helps them to just figure out where their blind spots are and where their areas of opportunity are that they might be missing because they're so down in the weeds. So hopefully that gives you some tangible ideas of how these assessments can work for you from a lead generation perspective. And I promise you, I'm going to tell you here in a minute how to make it easy, because I wouldn't be explaining how to do an assessment if there wasn't an easy way to set it up, because it could be clunky if there's not a simple way. And I found this tool that I can't wait to tell you about. Okay, so once you really know what problem is it that your ideal prospective clients might be experiencing, and I'm sure there's more than one, right? So just pick one or two. Let's start with one for you to create an assessment against. So I'll give you an example. I created an assessment. I'll share with you what the link here in a minute. And my assessment is about consulting business plans at the moment. It's a problem that I solve, one of many of, what is your business plan and what might it be missing that then causes you to not make money as quickly as you could. It causes you to overwork. It causes you to kind of create a business with death by a thousand nicks versus something you really enjoy and love, and it doesn't feel like such an uphill battle. I just picked out a really small sliver and said, you know what, I'm going to focus on business plans, a consulting business plan. And the problem that I solve is that most consultants don't have a business plan. They don't know what needs to be in a business plan, or they've created one, but they're not complying with it. They're not using it. It was more of a check the box type activity, or they've created one and it's really not fit for purpose. So I just picked that little sliver because, as you know, as consultants, if we don't have a really good plan of attack, a business model that we're trying to accomplish, then, it's like trying to create something, but you don't know what the destination is. So for you want to think about, like, what is one problem that I notice over and over again with my clients? What is that? Doesn't need to be all the problems, right? There's thousands of problems we could be solving. We're just picking one that we think might resonate with our ideal client. So for example, I'll just give the example that I was giving a moment ago about thinking about planning for next year. What kinds of questions could you be asking your ideal clients about what their planning process, why hasn't it worked in the past for planning for next year? What usually goes missing? What usually goes awry? Why is that? And really help them start thinking about that so much further in advance, because really now is the time to be thinking about 2023 plans so that they can start maneuvering the way they need to be maneuvering, affecting budgets, all of those kinds of things that we know are happening, coming up here at the beginning of Q3 usually. Okay, so ask yourself, you're going to reverse engineer your assessment. So the first step of that process is to ask yourself, what problem is it that I want to help them solve? I gave you some examples. Then you're going to ask yourself, what are the indicators that your ideal client has these problems? So I gave you some examples of that. Like they might not ever make a plan. If we're talking about 2023 plans, we never make a plan, or we make a plan in Q4 and it's too late, or those kinds of things. Those are indicators of that your ideal client has these problems. And then finally, you create your assessment off of that. So for example, kind of going back to my assessment, I know that one of the problems that I want to help clients solve through this assessment is to help them see what their business plan is missing. And so the indicators that my ideal client has a problem are, I don't have a business plan, or it's missing, in this assessment, I walk you through what are the components of a business plan, the 4 big components of a business plan, and then ask you questions about, what does it involve, right? So for example, if there's 4 big categories of a consulting business plan, then I'm asking you questions about each one of those categories to figure out how mature your business plan is. If it's really mature, then the tool will give you a really good rating and you know that that's an area that you might not need to focus on. And then when you see other areas that are less mature, then you know the tool will give you a rating around that. And then you're able to see this is an area that I might need to be focusing on. So hopefully that gives you a couple of different examples of how to make an assessment by reverse engineering it from the problems that you're helping your clients to solve. Okay, I promised you I would tell you about this tool that I found that's absolutely insane. If you're in the software world at all, as an aside, I cannot get over how amazing this tool is from a usability perspective and just like a very fit for purpose set of features. It's absolutely incredible how they've been able to distill it down to the exact features that someone would need in this workflow. But that's a software, kind of an aside as a software development geek. So this tool is called Score App. I have an affiliate link. I'll put it in the show notes. You're welcome to use the affiliate link. It gives you a 30-day trial. I most certainly would not be recommending this, even if I would be recommending it. I'll say it that way, even if I wasn't an affiliate. But my link will give you an extra, I think, a couple of weeks for the trial. So that benefits you. But this is a tool that I'm super excited to tell you about regardless, which is this. It helps you to essentially create the end-to-end workflow of this assessment. So we just talked about how do you reverse engineer an assessment that would get the attention of your ideal potential clients. So you just go in to this tool, literally name your assessment, write out the categories. So I just described to you, there's 4 categories in the assessment I created. They're about business plan, demand generation plan, capacity plan, and delivery plan. Those are my 4 categories. And then under those, you just put some questions. So for you, for example, you would just figure out what your categories are, how many, you could have 2 or 5 or whatever. And then what are the questions that could allow me to figure out how this organization is scoring against what I believe to be the best practice. And so you put in your questions and you kind of rate and score the answers, the potential answers. It's incredibly simple. And then essentially it sets up your assessment. It took me a couple hours probably to just figure out what kinds of questions I wanted to ask and what categories and what the answers would mean when someone answered it. Like if they said, I have a business plan, for example, that's for the next 3 years, and I would rate it really high. If they said, what's a business plan? Obviously, I would rate that really low. And so you just use this tool to essentially break out the whole assessment. Amazing, super easy. And then it also gives you the ability to create a website. So literally you just create this page. You put all the information about why should someone take the, very benefits oriented. Why should they take time to answer the questions and do this assessment? So that would be targeted to your ideal clients. So you don't need a website. You don't need anything. This does it all for you. Your ideal client would put in their name and their email address. So you're capturing those which is such an asset for your business. And then once they enter that information, they answer all of your assessment questions, then they get a results page that you've created that gives them insights into, what if you got red for this certain area of your organization? What does that mean? And what can you do about it? If you got a green, what does that mean? And what should you keep doing? If it's orange, same thing, right? So it gives them the ability for you to give some of them really valuable takeaways, and then to encourage a call, which would be you just saying, let's talk for 30 minutes and talk about your results. And I can give you some guidance about where to focus and where to take the results from there. So it just naturally leads into that conversation. So ultimately you just have a link that you would share to people. They would fill out, your ideal prospective clients. They would fill all of it out, and takes literally, I think my questionnaire is 25 or 26 questions. It takes 3 minutes. And then the system creates those results on the fly, very graphically, and gives you their contacts information. So you've got those leads. I can't even tell you how amazing it is. So with that, I'm going to walk you through a couple of ways that you can use. And look, if you don't want to use this software, you could certainly do some kind of a simple spreadsheet or something like that. This just makes it so much easier for you to administer and look so much more professional. So highly recommend it. Let's just wrap up today with me sharing with you a couple of ways that it would look for you to use this assessment in your lead generation process. So I'm going to give you two flows essentially. The first flow that you might think about. So let's just say you go through this process and you set up the assessment. Like I said, it took me about a half a day to get it all set up. All of this kind of from the beginning of thinking about what I wanted my assessment to be, to designing it, to getting all this tech set up. So to create something so powerful in half a day is incredible good use of your time. Okay, so the first way that you could use an assessment like this, once you get it set up, is like I was saying at the beginning, to create a first meeting. So you could reach out to those potential clients or even people that you know that might refer you to other people that are your ideal clients, and just talking about, connecting with them, right? I was thinking about you, or I noticed your company was recently in the news and thought you might be facing this certain challenge, like if there was an acquisition or something like that, or so-and-so mentioned you might have this type of a challenge. I thought I would reach out, or I noticed this industry trends, those kinds of conversation starters. And then you're offering them, look, I don't know if this would help you or not, but I created this assessment and I would love to send it to you and see, if it gives you some insights into best practices or patterns that might be blind spots for you right now. And that way you're essentially sending them this assessment to create a first meeting. It's helping them to measure in your results against industry best practices or their blind spots, or helping arm them for a planning purpose. And then at the same time, you're saying, you know what, let's meet for half an hour and just talk about your results so that you can really have that conversation, real-time conversation, and figure out what resonated with them and what didn't, and what they might be needing help with that you can provide your expertise. So that's a first example of how to leverage these assessments, is creating that conversation and ultimately the first meeting with them. And the second way is to advance the conversation that you might have already even started into a statement of work. So let's say you're in a conversation with a potential consulting client, and then you can use this assessment tool, you can leverage an assessment tool as part of your process, as part of your business development process. So if you were to create assessments, and the tool I was describing to you, you can create more than one. So you might create some assessments that say, you know what, I'm talking with this company and they're having issues. Let's go back to our retention issue example, right? They're having issues with retention. And so you could design an assessment or a couple of different assessments to say, you know what, I hear that you're having challenges with retention. Let's do a little bit of initial fact. You think the reason is X, Y, or Z. I have a really powerful assessment that we can use to evaluate whether or not different parts of your organization to figure out what's going on. And so you can use the assessment in that way to really figure out pockets of their organization that requires a deeper dive. It can help you with scoping. It can help you collect organizational data points or sentiments. It can help you figure out just areas of the organization that might be ripe for change or resistant to change. This assessment process I'm sharing with you today can be such a powerful way for you to advance a conversation from, initial conversations to maybe I need help, to like really getting the nuts and bolts that you need to create a high quality proposal and statement of work. And ultimately that can be unpaid because it's part of your sales process, or it could even be paid as part of a phase one sort of really, strategy setting type of a scope for a phase one. So hopefully that makes really good sense to you. I'm so excited about this. And sometimes I'm so excited about things, I skip over some of the details as I'm explaining it. So hopefully that walked you through in a really methodical way. I'm going to share with you my assessment. So I would recommend that you go take it, obviously. And I got a URL for it. So it has its own address. It's at icbizeval.com. So the letters IC for independent consultant, obviously. And then biz, B-I-Z, eval, E-V-A-L, icbizeval. So that's the website you can go to. The link will be in the show notes. You can go take my assessment and see what I'm talking about for yourself and put a visual to it all, that's going to help a ton too. And then if you want some help beyond the assessments, reach out and go to my website and look at the Independent Consultants Bootcamp. It's an amazing 3 months that we work one-on-one together to really dive into your business and the inner workings of your business so that you end at a place where you've got a really solid business model. Even if you've been working in your business for years, this is such a valuable process to really align your business model to your marketing, to your business development process, and to your delivery process, and to the way that you manage your capacity. So I would love to talk with you about that in more detail if you want my help in deep diving into your business so that you can make more money and have more free time. Okay, so you can find that at consultmelissa.com. You can find a link to my calendar to talk about it more. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you can share my passion over this amazing assessment tool and can be a really good tool in your tool belt for the business development and the growth of your consulting business. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again next week.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.